Are you looking for the best PS5 SSDs? In this video we will look at some of the 5 best PS5 SSDs on the market. Before we get started with our video, we have included links in the description. So make sure you check those out to see which one is in your budget range. Starting at number 1. PNY XLR8 CS3140 M.2 NVMe SSD Gaming Kit. This combination of a PNY CS3140 SSD and its custom PS5 heatsink is our best overall pick because it offers the best combination of price, performance, and heat dissipation. This SSD is an M.2 PCIe 4.04x4 device with a standard 5-year warranty. It is available as a 1TB, 2TB, or 4TB model. We tested the 1TB model. The SSD drive fits well onto the aluminum heatsink, which has a curvy design that fits right into the PS5 SSD space, replacing the cover panel with a flat heat spreader that sits over the ribbed heatsink. Under this is a large aluminum plate that fits on top of the SSD with the included thermal pad, which sticks the two together and transfers the heat. This heavy combination means it has plenty of metal to absorb the heat and the ribbed heatsink has plenty of surface area to dissipate the heat. That gave the best thermal performance in my tests, with the heat of the top plate reaching 3.2 degrees Celsius, 37.9 degrees Fahrenheit, while the heatsink was only a few degrees hotter, even after an hour of intense data transfer. That means the heatsink does an excellent job of keeping the SSD as cool as possible. Installing this drive is simple. Remove the PS5 cover, unscrew the SSD bay cover, install the SSD and use the small screw to secure it. The heatsink then fits into place above it. Use the longer screw included with the heatsink to secure it. It fits neatly against the case and will keep dust and dirt out. Great performance. Large heatsink dissipates heat effectively. Number 2. Western Digital WD_Black SN850 NVMe SSD. The Western Digital Black SD850 is the only SSD we tested that offers a feature dominant in the world of PC gaming components, a blinky LED light. For this drive, a small LED under the heatsink blinks slowly when the drive is in use. Whether that appeals to you, especially when hidden under the PS5 cover, is another matter. This SSD performs well, copying games and other data at a decent speed and without getting too hot. The temperature never rose above a very reasonable 3.9 degrees Celsius 39 degrees Fahrenheit. The SD850 has a heatsink attached to the drive, which covers all the data chips. This is a bit larger than the heatsink on the Samsung and leaves less room above for airflow, but the heatsink is not solid, there are channels in the body for air to pass through. This heatsink performed fairly well. Again, the installation was simple. After removing the PS5 drive bay cover, the SD850 snaps into the M.2 slot, and a single screw holds it tightly. Depending on your taste for blinking lights, you can put the cover back over the drive bay or leave it off. Includes a blinky LED. Good performance. Number 3. Seagate FireCuda 530 with heatsink NVMe Gen 4. The Seagate Gaming FireCuda 530 has a fancy name, but it's a standard SSD with a built-in heatsink. It's the only SSD with a metal heatsink that completely covers the drive, wrapping all of it, except the end that fits into the M.2 socket, in a metal frame. You might assume this would keep it cooler than the rest, but surprisingly that isn't the case. It isn't a big problem, since it did a good job keeping the drive cool, but it was a little bit warmer than some others, hitting a maximum of about 41 degrees Fahrenheit 5 degrees Celsius. The FireCuda 530 was as fast as the other drives and easy to install. Once you have removed the drive bay cover, you snap the drive into place and install the single screw that holds it there. This is a little awkward because of the larger heatsink. I had to find a screwdriver with a longer, thinner shaft to fit than the one I usually use. Large heatsink protects drive. Good performance. Number 4. Sabrent Rocket 4 Plus SSD plus M.2 NVMe heatsink for PS5. The Sabrent Rocket 4 Plus is a two-part package, the Rocket 4 Plus SSD, plus the PS5 heatsink. Make sure that you get the right package which includes the heatsink because the drive won't perform well without it. The SSD is a standard M.2 PCIe 4x4 drive with a 5-year warranty, but don't forget to register the drive with Sabrent. The warranty only runs for 2 years if you don't. The heatsink has an interesting design, with a black anodized heat spreader on top and a large aluminum heat block that fits on top of the drive. Like the PNY drive, this is designed to replace the PS5 drive bay cover, sealing the bay from dust and dirt while still conducting heat away from the drive. It's a nice design, down to the Sabrent logo swoosh on the top in shiny metal. Sabrent also included a small screwdriver, which is useful if you don't already have one. It is also pretty simple to install. Snap the drive into place, remove the cover from the thermal pad, and put the heatsink in place so it sits on top of the drive. Those who like logos will also be pleased to see that it uses the original PS5 screw to hold the heatsink in place, so you can still see the PS5 icons on the screw head. Nicely designed heatsink includes small screwdriver. Number 5. Kingston Fury Renegade 1TB PCIe Gen 4.0 NVMe M.2 internal gaming SSD. Kingston's Fury Renegade SSD is advertised as working with the PlayStation 5 but has no real heatsink. Instead, a heat spreader on the drive tries to vent the heat to the surrounding air, but it doesn't do a great job. The SSD gets up to a toasty 60 degrees Celsius 140 degrees Fahrenheit. That was on the end of the drive near the M.2 connector, right over the controller chip that does the hard work of moving data around on the drive. To be fair, the SSD's temperature didn't seem to affect its performance. It worked as well as the other drives, and read and writes data without issues. However, this is a bit warmer than SSDs should generally be, and the way that heat is concentrated in one area could adversely affect the drive's lifespan. Kingston offers the same 5-year warranty as the others, though, and you can get this drive with a heatsink if you're worried about the temperatures. Well priced. Good performance.